Well, as you all know, this is in continuation of the previous part, and there we have dealt till antenatal care. So in this presentation, we are going to start off with the intranatal care. Interestingly, if you ask anyone, childbirth is taken to be a very normal physiological phenomenon. Do you agree with this or not? So you think it's normal physiological phenomenon, right? But the thing is, not just as easy as it seems. There are a lot of complications which are possible during this period, leading to endangering of the mother's life. So it is very important that the care during this period is of great care. So what are the basic aims of intranatal care? Maintaining thorough asepsis, minimum injury to the mother and child, readiness for complications in case of prolonged labor, antepartum hemorrhage, convulsions, malpresentation of the baby, prolapse of cord, and of course, care of the baby at delivery involving resuscitation, care of the cord, care of the eye. So basically, intranatal care is a holistic care aimed at a safe mother and a safe child during the birth process. And here the emphasis is on the cleanliness. The clean hands and nails, the clean surface, the clean cutting of the cord, the clean cord, clean birth canal, and to ensure all this, it is important that the trained dyes are provided with the DDK. What is the full form of DDK? What is the full form of DDK that are given to the trained dyes? Disposable delivery kit. Yes, disposable delivery kits. Here, one thing I would like to mention, when we mention this 5 cleans, what do we mean when we say a clean cord? What is meant by the term clean cord? That is the clean surface. What is clean cord? There's a umbilical cord. What is it? The clean cord means no application of any medication or anything on the cord. Okay, so keeping the cord clean as it is. Now coming to the monitoring of the first stage of labor. So what are the basic things that you need to monitor in the very first stage of labor? The vital signs, the progress of labor, the graphic recording of labor can be done. BP, pulse, uterine contraction, descent of the presenting part, the fetal heart rate, if the PV is leaking, and whenever indicated, the pervaginal examination. Yes?
Some of them are not able to enter now.
Okay, I'll just let them enter. No issue. So coming to the second stage of labor monitoring. it has to be monitored that high level of asepsis is maintained. The delivery is done with minimum trauma to the mother and child. The readiness to deal with impending complications like PET, prolonged labor, PPH are well taken care of. What's the full form of PET? Yes? Full form of PET. Anyone? No. Here it is pre-eclamptic toxemia of the pregnancy. No, it's absolutely okay. And PPH is postpartum hemorrhage, very rightly said. So care of the newborn at birth, like resuscitation, care of the cord, care of the eyes, care of skin, and so on. When the birth is taken at the home, there is domiciliary care. It is very important that the asepsis is maintained thoroughly. But there are certain advantages of domiciliary care as well. And what are these? The female delivers in a familiar surrounding. So the mental readiness for the childbirth is way better. And it removes the fear of hospital delivery. And chances of cross infections are less. She may keep an eye on the household affairs as well, because in many cases there may not be any backup system. But the major disadvantages are the mother may have less medical and nursing supervision, which may be needed. And because she will tend to look over the household affairs, in spite of her condition, she will have less rest, resume the domestic duties very soon, because the household or family members will presume that since she is at home and the baby is already well, she is good to go for her duties. And most importantly, the diet is neglected in many of the cases. Yes. Tell me. Now, assess for yourself. Why is chances of infection less in the domiciliary care? What is that is not present in a home setting, which could be present in a hospital setting? Are the patients? There's chance of cross-infection, chance of developing hospital-acquired infections in the form of opportunistic ones. Yeah. And since at home, she will be restricted to a place with no other patient around, there is minimal chance of cross-infection with adequate medications on. Is it clear now? Okay. Now coming to the danger signals. What are the signs that will ensure that the mother needs to be immediately sent to some referral unit? First is sluggish pain or no pain after the rupture of membrane, or good pain for 1 hour after the rupture of membrane, but no progress. Prolapse of the cord or prolapse of the hand. Meconium stent liquor or slow, irregular or excessive fast fetal heart rate. Excessive show or bleeding during the labor. Let me tell you one thing in this connection. Here the word show refers to the bleeding PV. Collapse during labor, placenta not separated within half an hour, there is retained placenta, postpartum hemorrhage or collapse, temperature of 38 degrees Celsius or more during the labor. So you can see these are the danger signals. Needs institutionalization of the mother at the earliest. So I'm coming to the institutional delivery. It is seen that about 1% deliveries tends to be abnormal and 4% difficult labor requires services of doctors. So what do you think are the advantages of institutional delivery? Advantages of institutional delivery which we are continually urging on. What are the advantages?
Care to the mother and the child, the newly born child. Also, people will need to less people need less like due to STDs and all this injection.
Absolutely right. And the at-birth immunization can also be attended to. And at the institutional level, any such problems during the delivery can be attended immediately and the complications detected at the earliest. And the mother away from the family members is actually at the most receptive condition to receive the postnatal advices. Often what happens when the family members are around, the mothers are apprehensive, they are at awe of their other senior members and often not able to receive the informations as well. And in the institutional delivery, it is important that the newborn is kept along with the mother. Rooming in is to keep the baby crib by the mother's side, and bedding in is keeping the baby in the mother's bed. As far as rooming and bedding in is concerned, what do you think is the best possible care for the child right after the birth? Rooming in, bedding in, or something else? To ensure that the baby doesn't suffer from hypothermia. The baby doesn't get cold. Yes? Absolutely right. Yeah. Because when the child is with the mother, skin to skin contact in the kangaroo mother care, the baby has the least chance of hypothermia. So kangaroo mother care is the most desirable one. Now coming to the postnatal care. It is the care of the mother as well as of the newborn after the delivery. What are the objectives? The objectives are to prevent complications of the postpartum period, to provide care for the rapid restoration of the mother to optimum health, to check the adequacy of breastfeeding, to provide the family planning services, to provide the basic health education to the mother and the family as well. Why do you think the basic health education should be provided to the mother and the family as well? Why not only the mother? Yes, and anything else? Absolutely right. So there can be different complications during the postpartum period. Although we say that pregnancy is just a normal physiological phenomena, but there can be many complications during the postpartum period. One of them is the puerperal sepsis, which usually happens within 3 weeks after the delivery. The next one is thrombophlebitis. There is infections of the veins of the legs that involves swelling, raised temperature, and inflammation of the leg veins. Then there may be secondary hemorrhage, that is bleeding PV 6 hours to 6 weeks after delivery. So what is the bleeding PV before the first in the first 6 hours called? It is the primary hemorrhage. And from 6 hours to 6 weeks after delivery, it is the secondary hemorrhage. There can be other infections as well, like the urinary tract infection. There can be mastitis, which are to be addressed immediately. Now coming to the postnatal care. It is intended for early diagnosis and treatment with prompt measure and restoration of the mother to optimum health. The first is the physical part, and it starts off with the postnatal examinations that should take place soon after the delivery. So how frequently should this postnatal examination be taking place? Any idea? The health checkup must be frequent. Otherwise, you won't be able to detect any complications in between. That is twice a day during the first 3 days. Here you see the importance of institutional delivery. So if it is a domiciliary one, it is impossible to cater to that much care. But in institutional delivery, this is possible. So twice a day during the first 3 days, and subsequently once a day till the umbilical cord drops off. And the female health worker needs to check the vitals, breasts, check the progress of normal involution of uterus, examines the lochia for any abnormality, check urine and bowels, and advises on the perineal care. So there are so many aspects that needs to be taken care in the postnatal examinations. And after that, father visit should be done once in 2 or 3 months during the first 6 months. And after that, once in 2 or 3 months till the end of first year. Regarding the care of anemia, routine hemoglobin estimation has to be done. And if there is anemia, the treatment needs to be continued for a year. Now tell me, do you have any idea that what is the percentage of prevalence of anemia in pregnant women in our country? You're very close. It's almost more than 50% of the pregnant women are anemic at the time of diagnosis of pregnancy. And what is the dosage of IFA, that is iron folic acid, suggested for these women under the Anemia Mukt Bharat? For how many days? I asked this specifically because this has undergone changes. Okay. So now it is said, yes, it is 180 days and it is not 100 milligram anymore. It is 60 milligram with 500 microgram of folic acid as before. The folic acid dosage hasn't been changed, but the iron dosage has been reduced to 60 milligram, but the duration has been increased from 100 days to 180 days. Please do remember this. Yes?
Is there a specific reason for this?
See, it gives a protection over a longer period of time. And sometimes due to iron, there are intolerances, higher dose on iron. Okay. So to avoid that and give it a longer spectrum of coverage. Is it clear? Okay. Now coming to the nutrition. The nutritional needs of the mother must be adequately met. So it is important the mother gets adequate nutrition. And that day we had discussed about the pregnant mothers. But what about the lactating mothers? What is the extra calorie they should be taking per day? It is 550 what? Or 300? Which? No, say.
Or 300.
Okay. So it is your task to find out which is the right one. So in the coming from the nutrition, the postnatal exercises is also important. Why? To bring the stretched abdominal and pelvic muscles back to the normalcy. On the physical examination, we move on to the psychological component of it. The fear and insecurity that may be eliminated by proper prenatal instructions. So there are sometimes rarely noted cases of puerperal psychosis, though it is rare. Now coming to the breastfeeding. Regarding the breastfeeding, usually the Indian mothers have no difficulty in breastfeeding, and in spite of their not so good nutritional status, most of them are able to produce around 400 to 600 milliliters per day in the first year of birth. And that is sufficient to maintain the nutrition of the newborn in the first 6 months, where the exclusive breastfeeding is to be ensured. Now coming to the family planning, the mother should attend the postnatal contacts to adopt a suitable method for spacing the next birth. After the family planning, another important component in the postnatal care involves the basic health educations. So there are certain basic health education which needs to be communicated to the mother so that she is able to maintain her hygiene properly, feed herself and the infant properly. The spacing of pregnancy is ensured for the next one. The importance of health checkup is emphasized, and the birth registration is also done. Now coming to the care of the children. So here you people tell me what are the different childhood period that we segregate into from birth. Yes? You can see the slide and say also. What are the different categories of children over the period? Yes.
70 to 80 days.
Yes.
Four years is
1 to 4 years is preschool age. Yes. So that is the categorization usually done. Now coming to the neonatal care. So what are the basic objectives? Why do we think we should be ensuring a good neonatal care? Yes. Yes. See, there are different school of thoughts and each have their own way of representation. Okay. The toddler is usually the preschool days. That is the same as the preschool. We usually tend to call the 1 to 4 the preschool and then 5 to 14 as the school. But again, I'm telling you, these are very flexible and the pediatricians have their own take on these. The public health specialists have their own take on it and it varies. Coming to the neonatal care. So what are the basic objectives of neonatal care? That is establishing and maintenance of the cardiorespiratory functions, maintenance of the body temperature, avoidance of infection, establishment of the satisfactory feeding regime, and early detection and treatment of congenital and acquired infections, acquired disorders. So what are the things that you need to immediately attend to? That involves the early neonatal care and falls under the immediate care. That is, first and foremost, clearing of the airway. To help to establish breathing, the airway should be cleared of the mucus and other secretions. Second is the taking of the Apgar score. It is taken in the first minute and again at the 5th minute after birth. I will elaborate it once we go through the basic immediate care. Then is the care of the cord. The cord should be cut and tied when it has stopped pulsating. And care must be taken to prevent tetanus of the newborn by unsterilized instruments and unsterilized cord ties. What is the advantage if the cord is cut after it has stopped pulsating? Does it give any benefit to the newborn? There will be less bleeding. Anyone else? Anyone else would like to, supplement his answer? Yes, louder. Yes, around 10 milliliter of extra blood will be available to the newborn if the cord is cut after the pulsation is over. Now coming to the care of the eyes. Before the eyes are open, the lid margins of the newborn should be cleaned with a sterile wet swab. One for each eye from inner to outer side. And it should never be rubbed like this. Otherwise, the infection will re-enter. And then is the care of the skin. How the care of the skin is given? How is the care of the skin ensured? By giving the newborn a bath. But when is it first given? The first bath of the newborn? Anyone? When is the first bath of the newborn is given? Absolutely right. It is given after 7 days of birth, when the child's temperature has stabilized to a certain extent. Before, if you go for the bath, it will invite hypothermia of the newborn. Now coming to the Apgar score, which I had told you at that time that I'll be discussing now. So Apgar, A stands for activity, that is checking the muscle tone. P stands for pulse. G stands for the grimace, that is the reflex irritability. And the second A stands for the appearance, that is the skin color. The last R stands for the respiration. It is usually taken at the first minute and then again at the 5th minute. So if the activity is absent, then you give 0 points. But if there is flexed arms and legs, you assign 1 point. And if the newborn is active, you give 2 points. In the pulse, if it is absent, obviously you give 0 points. If it is below 100 beats per minute, 1 point. Above 100 beats per minute, 2 points. And regarding the grimace, if the child is floppy, you give 0 points. If there is minimum response to stimulation, you give 1 point. If there is prompt response to stimulation, you give 2 points. Coming to the next A, there is appearance. If the child is blue and pale, you give 0 points again. And if the body is pink and the extremities are blue, you give 1 point. And if the body and the extremities all are pink, you assign 2 points. Regarding the respiration, if it is absent, you assign 0. And if it is slow and irregular, then you assign 1 point. And if it is, the child is having a vigorous crying at right after birth, then you give 2 points. So this is how the composite scoring is done and the totaling is done, and based on that you categorize. Regarding the immediate care, apart from those which we have already discussed, there are certain other aspects as well. What are these? This is the maintenance of the body temperature, which we discussed, and how important it is. The normal temperature of a newborn is between 36.5 degrees Celsius to 37.5 degrees Celsius. It is important that immediately after birth, the child is quickly dried with a clean cloth and wrapped in a warm cloth and given to the mother for skin to skin contact and starting of the breastfeeding, so that the child gets the colostrum and the kangaroo mother care. So obviously another very important component in the immediate is the starting of the breastfeeding at the earliest. So it is usually said that it should be initiated at the earliest in case of normal delivery, and some other people say it is half an hour within the normal delivery and 4 to 6 hours of the cesarean section. It helps to establish a bond between the mother and the newborn. It also ensures that the colostrum, that is the first milk of the mother lets, that is the yellow or straw-colored milk, which is highly rich in proteins and other nutrients, antibodies which provide protection to the newborn from various diseases and infections like diarrhea. This is established to the newborn. Regarding the feeding, the newborn should be given demand feeding. What is demand feeding? What is demand feeding? Now here's an interesting question. If the child is to be fed every time he or she cries, is it necessary that every time the child cries is due to hunger? Or could there be other reasons? Usually when it is happening, this crying at a regular interval and the child is getting quiet after the feeding, it is usually due to hunger. But sometimes their gap may be very short and yet the child is crying. In that case, the child may be simply crying for company or attention or having some other set of problems. And absolutely refrain from using feeding bottles. And as we said, exclusive breastfeeding to be ensured in the first 6 months. What do you mean by when you say exclusive breastfeeding? Not even water. That is to be stressed upon. That is not even water. Because often the patient parties came to say, we just gave the child a little bit of honey. Otherwise, she is having mother's milk only. So that is not allowed. It's not good for the newborn. Why do you think the exogenously added honey, water, artificial feeding is detrimental for the newborn health? Why? What is the disadvantages of this exogenous feedings, artificial feedings? Be it even honey, warm water, artificial milk. What are the disadvantages? So the gut immunity is yet to develop. And that is why, to protect it, these are refrained. So let's look at the advantages of breastfeeding. It is safe, it's clean, cheap, and readily available, fully meets the nutritional demand of the infant, contains antimicrobial factors like macrophages, lymphocytes, secretory immunoglobulin A, and many more, and prevents against various infections. Easily digested by the normal premature infant who is yet to develop the gut immunity, promotes bonding between the mother and the child, and the suckling helps in development of the jaw and teeth of the newborn. And interestingly, more a child suckles the mother's breast, more is the breast milk formation. And the breastfeeding also prevents malnutrition and infant mortality. And since breastfeeding also induces lactational amenorrhea. It also helps in spacing of childbirth. And because of this breastfeeding, the hormonal outlets helps in involution of the uterus way better. Now coming to the neonatal examinations. The first examination should begin soon after birth. The second examination after 24 hours. Yes. I didn't get your question. Can you repeat, please? See, usually if the proper posture, proper psychological counseling and efforts are taken to ensure the newborn is given to the mother in the right position, there are very less chances that there will be failure of breastfeeding. But often patients comes with the complaint that I had a cesarean baby and I had a lot of medications and I'm not having enough milk. But honestly speaking, if the mother is given adequate hydration, there is lot of fluid and counseled adequately regarding the advantages of breastfeeding, given a comfortable setting and helped at positioning the newborn, there should be no reason that the breastfeeding should be failing. But in case it is absolutely not possible to initiate the breast milk letting, in that case, one has to start for artificial feeding, but it has to be carried out with lot of asepsis, but it will definitely bring along with it a set of possibility of infections and even chances of obesity in the longer run. Is it okay? So now coming to the neonatal examination, as we were saying, the first examination to begin soon after birth and second after 24 hours. There are certain important things that needs to be looked into to find out if the child is doing well, if there is any cyanosis, if the child is having any malformation, and asphyxia and many more. The child is measured and this involves taking the birth weight, the length of the child, which is usually measured with the help of a infantometer, the head circumference, and then neonatal screening is done to identify the at-risk infants. Why we need to screen? Because if we can identify the at-risk infants, we'll be able to treat them at the earliest. And obviously, let neonatal care. Now let us look at the at-risk infant. If the birth weight is less than 2.5 kilograms, it is certainly at-risk infant. There is low birth weight, which we will be taking up in the next class. Twins, if the birth order is equal to or more than 5. Artificial feeding, as I have already explained. Then second or third degree of malnutrition in the child. Failure to gain weight in 3 successive months. Children with PEM, diarrhea. And the last one mentioned in the textbooks usually is working mother or single parent. How many of you agree with this last point? Do you think it is right that yes, the infants are at risk if there is a working mother? Or if it is a single parent? What is your take on this? Please. Do you think having a working mother is making the infant at risk? What is your thought? Okay, like? Okay, and anyone else? No one has a take on this? Okay. So there can be nutritional problem, there can be psychological problem. But how do you think it can be addressed? Usually in the working places, they are now incorporating creches so that even the working mother can take along her newborn and attend. Secondly, many of the working institutions have gone for maternity leaves, which covers till the first 6 months of delivery, ensuring that the mother is able to breastfeed the child. In those conditions where the mother has to join earlier because of economic reasons or reasons of commitment, in that case, express breast milk. There's a breast milk that has been expressed. It remains normal in room temperature for 24 hours. Around 3 to 8 hours, and in fridge for 24 hours. So there are possible interventions by which you can make sure that even a working mother does not have a risk infant. So thank you so much for all your attention. We'll carry on in the next class. It was wonderful to have you all.